After 8 rounds of GT World Challenge America's GT Rivals Esports Invitational, we bring things to a close on this 31st of May. For 2 months, esports competitors and professional drivers alike have competed on the Assetto Corsa Competizione platform as a way to still enjoy motorsports during a global pandemic. This series has traversed the virtual world, from California to Australia, and now to its final round of the season, Kyalami Racing Circuit in South Africa. It's the site of the season finale for the Intercontinental GT Challenge, which accomplishes the same thing SRO America has done with GT Rivals: bring people together from across the country and the world to enjoy motorsports together. Today marks our final race in the first season of GT Rivals as we tackle 60 minutes of sports car racing at Kyalami. Welcome to GT World Challenge America. My name is Kyle Heyer from SimTV, joined by the always informed and well-spoken Ryan Marine as we enjoy one more round of international racing at Kyalami this afternoon. Ryan, welcome back. This is our final race of the season, 60 minutes around a track that a lot of drivers don't know, and this is one of the, I think, the only sim racing platform that allows drivers to drive on this laser scan version of Kyalami, so lots of unknowns going into this race, but there is one driver in particular that feels right at home.
Yeah, that's for sure. And David Perro, we're looking at him right here. He lives in the UK now, but he is from South Africa, and as far as I can tell, is the only driver on this grid that has raced on this circuit here at Kyalami, which has undergone quite a few renovations over the last decade or so. Really was saved in 2014 when the track was up for auction, was bought by Toby Venter, who is the owner of Porsche South Africa, and he and some investors have poured a lot of resources into this track, revitalized it, and for the first time in many decades brought international racing back to South Africa with the Kyalami 9 Hours last year, part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli. It was a great success, received rave reviews. This track was really well liked by everyone, journalists, drivers, fans alike, and it's going to be fun to see it here in the virtual world as well. I think a fitting finale for us here in GT Rivals. Don't have a points-paying structure like many of the other sim racing championships, so I think it's fitting that we basically reset the field to 0, coming to Kyalami, like you said, a track that drivers really have very limited experience with. It seems like a perfect way to conclude the season.
Again, we've traveled through 7 different rounds prior to this one. We've gone all over the world. We've been to California, we've been to Italy, we've been to France. We've been pretty much everywhere around the globe, and to bring this series to a pretty specific place, Kyalami Racing Circuit, where the Intercontinental GT Challenge wraps up this season, this feels a little bit special, Ryan, as we head into our final race of the season. 60 minutes. We've seen, last week we were at Mount Panorama. That race, I think we saw some new drivers up at the top of the board. It was Carl Whitmer that came out on top there in the number 22 Acura NSX. He's been pretty quick this week, but the Acura in particular is missing one driver this week that has driven it every other round this season, and that driver is Tom O'Gorman. And he, this week, is in a Porsche. And that is probably one of the biggest changes we've seen, probably even bigger than Corey Lewis jumping from the Lamborghini to the Aston Martin a couple weeks ago. Tomo in a Porsche, this feels a little bit wrong, doesn't it?
It sure does. We were watching the practice session that preceded qualifying here, and yeah, it took a little while to get used to the idea that Tomo's in this Porsche, but I think he really wants to go for broke here and win this championship, and he sampled a lot of the cars and talked to some folks and feels like the Porsche is going to give him the best chance of getting that victory. And you mentioned some of his partners. You could see him in that beautiful livery on the Porsche. Asus has really helped him out here in the last couple of weeks with a new gaming desktop and a new monitor as well, and we're gonna have a prize package to talk about a little bit later, and a lot of that prize package is actually exactly what Tomo uses in his sim racing. So that's a way that you can get involved in doing the same kind of things that these guys are. But back to the Porsche storyline, it's going to be interesting to see if the pace that we've seen from him so far in some of the practices earlier in the week, and in fact just a little while ago, can be sustained for an entire race, because if it can, he's going to be one of the favorites at the front of the field.
And you mentioned Asus and the partnership that he has with them, but they're also a partner with GT Rivals and GT World Challenge America, and we want to thank everybody that's at the bottom of your screen. You see the sponsors on the tab there, and everybody that has been a part of this for this entire 8-round season has been an instrumental part of making this series happen. Of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione for doing an incredible job behind the scenes of really of improving this the simulation from the very beginning, and also working on it behind the scenes to make sure that these broadcasts go smoothly. They've been a huge help to me personally, getting things set up for these broadcasts. And of course, Asus, we already mentioned. Fanatec and SimLab also offering up some prizes. Champion Motorsports, they're the group that puts on these events from a stewarding standpoint. They do a spectacular job, and they also have some of the drivers in the field with the gray number boards. Those are CMS drivers. Of course, AWS for making sure that this stream gets all around the world flawlessly each and every week. CrowdStrike and Pirelli, as well as Rebellion, Total, Optima Batteries, Skip Barber Racing School, 511 Tactical, and of course SRO America. So many people to thank, right, as we enter our last race of the season. But this has been an extraordinary experience, not only for myself, but I know for the drivers as well, to get to race esports drivers, and the esports drivers get to race pro drivers, and that's unlike anything else. When you get to compete with them on this level, I think it's really unique and extraordinary.
It is, and you're bringing, like you said, the real-world drivers together with the sim racing community, and they've been such an integral part in this. It's more difficult than just turning on your sim gaming computer and starting up Assetto Corsa Competizione to pull off an event of this magnitude week after week. And so, like you said, a big thanks to all the folks behind the scenes who have helped to make this happen. But regarding just the collection of talent that we have on track, I think it's cool because it's not just, like you said, the sim drivers and the real world drivers, but it's every level of the SRO Motorsports America organization that's represented, from the top level GT3 guys, from GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. You also have Pirelli GT4 America drivers and TC America drivers as well from the touring cars, and it's provided a level playing field for all of them to show what they can do. And I think guys like Kevin Boehm and Tom O'Gorman, who have more of a background in the touring cars, really showing off what they can do in GT3 machinery. The guy we're looking at here, Colin Mullen, has some touring car experience as well as GT4 experience, but has been very fast in the GT cars. And then you have the guys from the sim racing world showing that they've got the chops too. So it's a great collection of talent, and it's been fun to watch them all fighting on a level playing field.
And there's Josh Stafford in the number 230, one of the head guys at CMS that has been working so hard behind the scenes to make sure that these events go off without a hitch. He's got the Thank You SRO America on the side of that car this week, and it's really cool, I think, for these guys to have been able to work with GT World Challenge America to put on these events. I'm sure that's something that they're going to always have in their back pocket, to have worked with a group like this. And again, even for us here at Sim TV, I've got Finian behind the scenes helping me out here. Just starting sim racing broadcasting a couple years ago. I've worked with other sims, but coming over here, Ryan, and doing this has been an exceptional experience for us. And to work with someone as professional as yourself, it's really been an incredible experience. So we got 13 minutes left in qualifying. The drivers here are basically the best of the best from the series that we've had over the course of the season. And looking at the time so far, Tom O'Gorman at the top, but David Perro, hometown guy here this week, Ryan, the number 111 car, second place.
Yeah, still a lot of time left, 13 minutes, and obviously caught some traffic there and didn't feel like he had a lap going that was worth continuing. Maybe going to go in and make some changes as well to the setup as these guys try and eke out that little bit of extra time. I think the gap that we're seeing right now from Tom in first to David in second, that's going to come down. Tom's time is going to be pretty close to the pointy end, I suspect, when it's all said and done. But I think you're going to be seeing a host of drivers in the low 140s based on the practice that we've seen. And David's a little bit off of that at the moment. I don't think that's going to last very long. And you see him jump back to third there, as Lastry's now up into the second spot, but still 4/10 off of Tom's time. It was incredibly competitive in the practice session. We saw really the top 8 kind of separate themselves. The gaps between them were very, very small. And I think you have to throw Brian Highcutter's name into that mix as well, as he jumps up to second. He got into the session late, as is his custom. And I think he's going to be one, as we've come to expect, to keep an eye on. If there is a favorite, it is him. However, he's not coming off of a victory, and that's only been said a couple of times. Last week, it was Carl Whitmer's turn at the front, becoming the third different driver to win in 7 races.
So we've had a couple different winners in recent weeks, but again, Perro, we're going to actually get to ride on board with him just after qualifying to show you a lap around Kyalami Racing Circuit. We'll also show you a track map. This place just recently got reconfigured, kind of reprofiled here, Ryan. So this is a track that very few people have competed on in general, but yeah, I think as far as we know, David Perro is the only driver here today that has ever even driven on this track, period.
And I reserve the right to be proven wrong on that, but as far as I can tell, looking through the entry list, there was no one that jumped out that I can say had a chance to do that, especially on this reconfigured circuit. There's somebody who did, I think A1GP was hosted here at Kyalami if you go back 10, 15 years, whatever that was, but that was a different track layout. So I think it's very unlikely that there's anybody else. David was part of that Intercontinental race at this track last year, and I don't think there's anyone else in the lineup that was in that race. So with that said, as far as real world experience, it's going to be lacking up and down, but especially the guys from the pro ranks, what they do week in, week out is learn racetracks, and it doesn't take them long, these pros, to get up to speed, and I think we've seen that translating throughout the course of this season to the sim racing world, because keep in mind, other than Laguna Seca, none of these tracks are on the GT World Challenge America schedule, because that's the only one that is in America. So with that said, we've seen these guys be rapid right off the bat. It doesn't take them long, and I don't think it's going to be a handicap to any of them that they don't have any real-world experience here.
All right, so here's Brian Heidkotter in second right now. Tom O'Gorman still top of the world with a 140.275, just about halfway through qualifying here. You mentioned learning the racetrack, and again, for a lot of drivers that have competed so far, they're at least been, if they're not familiar with the track in the real world, they've driven it in sims 1.5 million times, like Spa, Mount Panorama. All those tracks are very well-known circuits that, not to say that Kyalami isn't well-known, but they're circuits that are represented in a lot of sims. Now, there's definitely some question marks about this racetrack today for the drivers that are competing here. Because this track has a couple features on it that are extraordinarily tricky. And I'm waiting to get to really show you an opportunity here to take a look at one of these corners. The penultimate turn, as we approach it here shortly with Josh Staffen in the number 9, you're going to see on the inside, driver's right here, this big curb here in the bottom right of your screen, that will launch your car airborne. And we're going to see that quite a bit, especially on the opening couple laps tonight. I think drivers are going to get greedy with the curbing, and they're going to really experience how tall those curbs are and send them for a big flight if they don't respect the track limits here on corner apex, especially.
Yeah, you were excited to show me that during the practice earlier, not just the telestrator, but that curb, and we kind of missed the chance to pause it in time to circle it with the telestrator, but we didn't need any help because I think it was Tammy who just went ramping off of it and blasted off, kind of like the SpaceX rocket yesterday. So you'll know when it happens as Staffen goes on a wild ride into the barrier there on the exit of that corner. You'll know if it happens. It's pretty drastic, and it should be a deterrent for these guys so that hopefully we're not talking about track limits. Yeah,
and again, there's definitely a lot of natural deterrents here. There's not a lot of paved runoff. The last corner is really the only example I can think of where there's really good paved runoff that you could, in theory, use to gain advantage of. Of course, there are systems in place to prevent that. Most of the rest of the track's got plenty of gravel traps and tall curbs, enough to keep drivers in check tonight, so I don't think it'll be a big issue. But there's Kevin Bowman, the number 90 CrowdStrike car, sits 8th right now behind Whitmer. McMillan's up to 6th. Shimshak in the number 87 car is up into 5th. And Tomas Lastra in the 717, he is 4th. Perro 3rd. Heidkotter 2nd. Tom O'Gorman still 1st right now.
And one other storyline that we should note here while we're in qualifying, if you're a Nelson Mason fan and you're waiting to see him pop up, you're not going to, because there was a penalty assessed at the end of the race last week in Bathurst that is carried over to this race, and effectively Nelson will have to start at the back of the field here today because of that, so he is not going out for qualifying. He will be starting in the final spot, 27th. You can see the DSQ by his name there on the leaderboard on the left, and that's just for this session, so he will be able to start the race, but has to do so in the back. And I think this is of particular interest because he was very, very fast in qualifying, spent some time at the top of the leaderboard, in fact. So I think what could be fun for us, less fun for him, is watching him come up through this field. I think he's going to be one of the fastest cars out there, and it should make for a challenge for him to make his way back up to the front, and a lot of fun for us to try and keep tabs on him.
Riding on the board right now with Scott Michaels in the number 134 car tonight. Ran his first GT Rivals race at Mount Panorama last week, and it didn't really go off without a hitch, Ryan. He got himself basically disqualified, I believe, because of a pit issue, and I think he had some pretty good pace there, so I'm really excited to see him drive forward today. Currently 16th in qualifying, but Michaels was really impressive. in his raw pace. I think we're going to see some of that. He's got about 6 minutes left to improve his qualifying effort as the 90 jumps to P4. But Michael's really impressive, and we'll see where he can line up for the start of this final race.
Yeah, that's the Valkenhorst livery on that car, and there's a reason for that, because he is part of the Valkenhorst sim racing lineup. We talked about it a little bit last week, but he won a sim version of the Nürburgring 24 here in the last handful of weeks or so, and that's a pretty prestigious thing to put in your cap if you're a sim racer. It takes quite a bit of commitment, because that's on the Nordschleife. You got to learn that whole track, and that's a real challenge. So, to your point, he was really fast last week, and it was kind of just an accident that he ended up disqualified. He came in to serve his penalty. You're given 3 laps to do so, but because his pit box was beyond start finish, he actually was starting on a 4th lap, and as he was coming in to serve the penalty, and therefore got the disqualification. But I expect him to be very fast. Interesting to note that in the actual IGTC race here at Kyalami last year, it was the Valkenhorst BMW that finished second to the Porsche from Frikadelli Racing. So back to the Tom O'Gorman story, maybe there's a real-world example for him to choose from why he opted to go with the Porsche here, because they picked up the win. And that gives me a chance to make a quick note of the Frikadelli team. It's one of my favorite team names. 1, because it's fun to say, and 2, because it just means meatball. So it's just meatball racing, which is pretty fantastic.
I love that. So 5 minutes left in qualifying. You'll notice on the bottom right of your screen, enter to win in the chat below. You can enter to win an Asus ROG Fanatec and SimLab Mega Bundle, and as well as a copy of Assetto Corsa Competizione. We mentioned Tom O'Gorman and his partnership with Asus. You can win a lot of the stuff that he has just by entering to win in the chat. We'll see that a couple more times today. So make sure you get on it quicker, sooner than later, to make sure you have the best opportunity possible to win those things. So, giveaway. Gonna hide for now. 4 minutes and 40 seconds left. McMillan has jumped to 3rd place. Josh Staffen only 9th quick. Are we expecting to see Staffen move forward? This is, typically when we see Staffen, he's top 5, top 3. 9th place seems a little off pace for him.
Well, it does kind of mesh with what we saw from him in practice. He was 8th, I think, the last I saw, and I haven't pulled up the results here. Let me do that. From that practice session, he actually ended up 9th. So this is kind of where we've seen him here. It is surprising because he's part of the Champion Motorsports group. He's only started a handful of races, but he did win one of them and had a chance to win the other. And so I kind of thought this might be a chance for him to come out and nab a championship despite running a partial season, but he's going to have a lot of work to do. 6/10 back right now in 9th, and like I said, that's not really the position you want to be in to start this race if you've got eyes on winning it.
You'll notice offline, there are all the marbles on the runoff area. They're going to see a lot of tire wear and degradation today, I would imagine. But again, 60 minutes, no pit stops. It's just a sprint from the very start of the race to the very end of the race. Let's run on board here with Staffen as we head towards turn number 1. The reason why I'm a little bit
to 3rd real quick.
Well, I'm a little bit concerned here as we see him jump up a spot here. I'm a little bit concerned as we take a look at this turn 1 entry. You're coming in from pretty much the middle of the racetrack. This track, it looks like it's about 100 feet wide. It's really not as wide as it looks. The racing line is very narrow through there. You have to get all the way to driver's left, and I do predict that we're going to see a bit of a tumble in turn 1. We saw that in the practice races a couple days ago. The field fans out, and they have to get narrowed down to the apex for turn 1. I'm a little bit concerned for the drivers starting up front if they're going to be defensive enough and also not get themselves spun around. So the start going to be a wild moment to watch here, Ryan, as we see Staffen, as you mentioned, go P3.
Yeah, that is one of those inviting turn 1 scenarios, kind of like turn 1 at the old Cleveland Burke Lakefront Airport Street Circuit or the St. Petersburg Street Circuit, where it's so wide and then all of a sudden it funnels in the middle. And maybe this is more of an optical illusion. It's not quite as wide as those two. But nevertheless, you have some pavement there to make it 3 wide at the start, and it's not going to work at apex. You really have to get it settled out there. So that's definitely going to be a challenge for these guys at the start, which has been a fraught moment pretty much every week except for last week. The guys were really clean at the start in Hell Corner there in Bathurst, and maybe that carries over.
Yeah, we only had 1 spin on lap number 1 at Mount Panorama, and we did have a pile up the hill later in the race, but yeah, that's going to happen. That's how that track is. It's designed to be narrow and challenging, and it certainly was towards the middle of the race. But This track, very, very fast. I mean, we talk about a lot about the different characteristics of European tracks versus American tracks that tend to have some differences. You know, a lot of European tracks tend to be very point and shoot. American tracks tend to be very flowy. This is something different entirely. A lot of decreasing radius corners, high-speed sweepers. There's a lot of risk at this track, you know, between staying online and going way off into the gravel. So there's going to be a lot of risk versus reward to play with, especially at the front of the field. We've got a very, very strong top 5, top 10 drivers. And again, we actually have more CMS drivers, more esports competitors this week than we have in weeks past. We got, I think, 8 of them this week, which is more than the 5 we've seen in previous GT Rivals events.
That's right. So that'll be a storyline to keep an eye on. But to this point, it is top 4 all real-world race car drivers. And then we've got Josh Staffen there in 5th as the fastest from the CMS stable. And you can tell, if you're new to this championship, you can look at the numbers on that leaderboard. The white background for the numbers indicates they're from one of the SRO championships. The gray indicates that they are from the Champion Motorsports group. And I think we might have one with a red background, and that's an invitational driver. Not sure if that's come through or not, and it has, and that's a name that some folks might recognize.
That's Chris Forsberg. We've seen him from Formula Drift. He's also, we find him at Grid Life events now and then as well here, Ryan, but running the Nissan GTR today to join Brian Heitkotter in the Big Heavy Boy with Weeks in the 20th place in the 465, also in the Nissan. I think that's more of the GTRs than we've seen, but Forsberg right now 26th, his best lap of 144.1. And let me tell you something, well, qualifying finishes up here. I did a practice race with these guys yesterday, Ryan. I'm not, and I don't want to toot my own horn, I'm not a bad sim racer. I'm generally on pace when it comes to most racing sims, including ACC. I got into practice session the other day. I was 4 seconds off the next slowest driver. That is incredibly fast the laps that these people are running. And again, I'm not a slouch. I know what I'm doing a little bit, but these guys are so fast right now, and I just can't even express the speeds, and the competition that we're seeing is second to none right now in GT Rivals.
And it's just gotten closer and closer as the season has progressed. That's been the fun thing as the pro drivers really get their hands on ACC. Some of them had sim experience, but not a lot of them had experience with ACC, and some were brand new to sim racing entirely. And we've seen the field get faster and faster and closer as the season has gone along, and they've gotten that experience. As the clock is at 0, Tom O'Gorman at the top, but still a couple of fast guys trying to knock him off his perch.
McMillan comes across the line. What's it going to be? It might be an improvement for him. A 140.326. Is that going to be good enough for pole? Will it count? As he comes across the line, doesn't look, oh, that was his best, sorry. So 140.4 is what he just ran. So it will not be an improvement. He will stay P3. Let's have a look here at our timetable here, Ryan, and run down our starting grid. It's going to be Tom O'Gorman, Brian Heitkotter, Nick McMillan, David Perro, and Kevin Boehm, your top 5.
Not a ton of surprises there. Great to see Tomo at the top, and it looks like the early returns on that switch to the Porsche has been a good one. But look how close that is. Less than a tenth from O'Gorman to Heitkotter, less than a tenth from Heitkotter to McMillan, then a couple tenths back to David Perro. But his race long pace has really been his strength to this point in GT Rivals. Boehm has been tremendous all season. You got Staffen there. Shimshak, I think, could have hoped for a little bit more, but all in all, a really great performance from these guys up at the top, and it's the names we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and we'll run down one more time for you here as we just had the session tick over. So here is one last look at our starting lineup for this race. So we mentioned O'Gorman, Heitkotter, McMillan, and then let's jump down the order a little bit. See Mullen in the lone McLaren in the field. He's back in 14th place. Kenny Murillo in 13th. We'll scroll down a little bit to find Grunfeld, Weeks, and Yuan, some of the CMS drivers down there, 20th through 22nd. JT Tammy as well in the 18th place Lexus RCF GT3. Scott Michaels, we mentioned him, talked about him briefly. He sits in 17th in the M6 GT3.
Yep, exactly. Great to have him, and hopefully it's a more clean run for him in this one here. I think the car to keep an eye on at the start is the one actually at the very bottom of that list. I can't wait to see what Nelson Mason does from the back of the grid. Not sure what happened with Kenny Murillo there. He's usually one that figures in for the fight in the top 5. Don't know if he had a penalty, don't know if he just had a connection issue or wants to start from the back just for the challenge of it. Hopefully he is able to take the green, however.
All right, we're going to step away just briefly before we get started for our final race of the GT Rivals Esports Invitational. We will be right back. The GT Rivals Esports Invitational has traversed the world, from the coast of California to Mount Panorama Circuit in Bathurst, Australia, to the forests of Belgium. A global network of racetracks, a global group of drivers, and a global group of fans. This is what racing is all about, turning noise into entertainment. Kyalami brings GT Rivals to an end this afternoon after 60 minutes. And while the cars are virtual, Ryan Marine, the racing is and has been very, very real. We're about to get rolling here for 60 minutes. So excited to get this one underway.
Yeah, can't wait to wrap this one up. A beautiful venue to close out the season as it was last year for the Intercontinental GT Challenge, powered by Pirelli. Who can forget some of those breathtaking images we saw at that race last year, which ended in the nighttime with some massive lightning storms just outside the track. Really unforgettable images there, but we're not going to have to worry about rain or thunderstorms here in ACC today, although that is a possibility, of course, within the sim. But beautiful weather conditions, relatively cool track conditions, fast lap times so far, and a track that is relatively new to just about all of these competitors, and a great way to wrap up what has been a successful run in GT Rivals.
Well, let's have a look at the track this afternoon. Kyalami Racing Circuit in Johannesburg, South Africa, 4.58 kilometers around here, 16 corners. It all starts with a right-hand kink down the front straightaway, high speed, top of 6th gear, down into turn number 2, hard left-hand turn, hairpin there, big curb on the inside, up through turns 3 and 4 and 5, make a hard left-hander, down to turn 6. It's a downhill sweeper. They call it Sunset. Then the left-hander into clubhouse, turn number 7. Short straight to 8 and 9, a left-right sweeper up to turns 10 and 11. Kind of 2 corners built into one. A downhill run through 12. And then to 13, 14, and 15, the corner with the big curb we talked about earlier. A treacherous corner for sure, but it all wraps up with the final turn. Turn number 16, which puts us back on the front straightaway, 60 minutes. And we're going to be silent for a moment here as we go through a lap with David Perro in the Ferrari.
Hello everyone, Coach Dave here, and I'm going to take you around a lap of my home circuit in Johannesburg, South Africa, the Kyalami Grand Prix track. This weekend I'll be competing in the GT Rivals with Kessel Racing in the Ferrari Rd.8 GT3, and I'm looking forward to you guys getting a sample of what I think is one of the best tracks in the world. Heading down now towards turn 1. This used to have an S-bend in it, but now they've extended it to a straight so you can get an easy overtaking opportunity into turn 1, braking at the 100-meter board. You want to get nice and close to this apex and get on the power as soon as you can as you head up the hill towards the next very difficult turn. Careful of the curves as you go through here, braking quite early, but you also want to get on the power quite early through here. Very difficult corner to manage. Maximizing the exit and then heading towards the high-speed right-hander, which is called Sunset. For obvious reasons, when you turn in here during sunset, the sun can be in your eyes. There's a big bump at the exit. It's very high speed, usually done in 4th gear. And then braking now for this left-hander, which will head towards the S's, also high speed in race and qualifying conditions. And now through the S's, you want to turn in early, just get a little bit of the curb on the inside, and then if you get everything right, there will be a small lift through this right-hand as you head up the hill to the highest point of the racetrack called Leeuwkop, which is a hairpin as we head down the hill for a very high-speed left-hander. As you go over here, you see a view of Johannesburg, and if you race at night like I did during the Kyalami 9-hour, you also see some pretty awesome lightning and thunderstorms. Heading here through the mine shaft, prime overtaking opportunity at the exit as we brake for the bowl. Very difficult to spot your apex. So I'm just going to brake a little bit early for this one. I want to get that apex, get on the power as soon as you can. You can really maximize the exit here. And then we head up to a very dangerous little kink. If you touch that sausage on the inside, you're going to go out towards the gravel, and that's not where you want to be. Final turn on the track, braking as hard as possible. Nice consistent apex and getting on the power as soon as possible, maximizing the exit as we complete a lap of the Kyalami GP track. Hope you found that useful, and really looking forward to showing you guys around here once again during the race on Sunday, which you can watch live on youtube.com/GTRivals.
The cars are roaring to life. We're just about starting our formation lap here, Ryan Marine, as we get everybody racked up and stacked up. Double wide, we're about 25 cars deep this afternoon for 60 minutes in the season finale of the GT Rivals Esports Invitational. So excited to get this one underway. And Tom O'Gorman, his first pole of the season, starts on the inside of that front row. The interesting thing about Kyalami here is that the first turn is technically a right-hand turn. So Tom is going to be sitting on the right, but really the first corner I would consider is turn number 2. That's that sharp left-hander. So that's going to make the start very intriguing.
That's right. So we've kind of been talking about Crowthorne as turn 1, and largely that is the case. But there is this little kink on the pit straight that technically goes in as turn 1. It hardly should count as a turn, but there you have it. So it's really that left-hander at turn 2 that we're very concerned about, and that's where Tom's going to have the preferred line going into that corner, and really just going to try and control the field from there. Like you said, first pole for him, first race racing in this Porsche here after spending a lot of time in that NSX in previous races, and I think so far that decision is paying off in spades. Now he needs to translate that good qualifying start into a nice clean run if he's going to hold off Brian Heidkotter, who's won all but a handful of the races so far this season.
I think Tom was really excited to get this race underway tonight. I think he feels very competitive this week. So here he sits on pole. Heidkotter second, McMillan, Perro, Bohm, the rest of your top 5. You mentioned the 10 car of Nelson Mason having to bring up the rear for the start. He's had incredible pace since he's joined the series, and I will expect him to climb through the field very quickly, especially the big dive down into turn 1. That could gain him a couple spots at the risk of maybe getting into an incident, so he'll have to be a little bit careful not to find himself in a bad situation on the opening lap. So we head down the hill here. Heidkotter on driver's left, and Tomo in the Porsche on driver's right. We head towards turns 13, 14, and 15 here, Ryan. Keys to the race. Of course, we always talk about track limits, but this time I don't think it's corner exit you have to worry about. I think it's the apexes that are going to be the big ones tonight with those big curbs.
Yeah, that's right. Stay off those big curbs. They can damage the car. It's managing to start coming through clean, especially if you're in this top 6. Any of those guys, I think, have a chance to win this race, but it's all about survival there for the first lap or so, settling into a rhythm and then attacking from there, minimizing the mistakes, because at this level, as competitive as these races have been, one mistake pretty much disqualifies you for a chance at the win.
Field pulls onto the front straightaway. Final round of the season. The GT Rivals Esports Invitational by GT World Challenge America. Waiting for the green flag to fly. 60 minutes at Kyalami Racing Circuit in South Africa. Green flag flies. We're sports car racing for the final time in GT Rivals. And the field fans out. 3, 4, 5 wide as we head down to turn number 1. There's Perro all the way against the white line. The 38 car, John Miller, way deep on the brakes to the inside of turn number 1 and 2. The spin, the 3 car gets turned around in front of Bohm. Bohm slams into him. The 33 of Murillo, he's off as well. The field stacks up. There's a 333 of Oulet also spun around. Tom O'Gorman, though, he gets free and clear, but he's back to third as through goes Perro, and I believe that's Heidkotter out front.
It is Brian Heidkotter with a great jump, and what you talked about there, actually ending up with the preferred line for that first major corner really did help Heidkotter, and also allowed Perro to follow him through. So O'Gorman's going to have some work to do to try and come back up through that group of 2 that's up ahead of him, and going back to that accident there that we saw a little while ago, that's the survival we were talking about. So many contenders effectively eliminated in the first corner of this race.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be a very inviting corner to try to stick the nose down the inside. I think that was just inevitable. When you get cars that wide, I don't care how much you're paying attention, you're not going to be able to know how many cars there are on your left or how many cars there are to your right. You can see who's immediately next to you, but not beyond that, and it takes a lot more cooperation than what we saw there to get that done successfully. But I think for the most part, we've gotten away with, since then, we've been okay as the rest of the field comes on through towards the end of lap number 1. There's Carl Whitmer, last week's winner from Mount Panorama in the number 22, the red Acura in the middle of your screen. Up the road slightly is Shimshak in the 87. Remember, he started the season back at Spa-Francorchamps round number 4. He had trouble there, ended up still getting a good result. He sits in 6th at the conclusion of lap number 1.
Yeah, started on pole there, actually, but didn't get a good start there. Was a bit confused, I'm afraid to say, about where the start was going to take place with a couple different start lines there used for different series at Spa. But like you said, had some misfortune, but did recover for a good finish, and he's been fast week in and week out. Here's the guy I wanted to update us on. Nelson Mason from last to 14th already. Part of that was surviving the start and coming through the field there, but you can see he's already making some passes as well. I think he's going to be very, very fast based on the pace that we've seen so far from him, and you can see already making a lot of progress up through this field as they fan out in front of him.
Well, that's the, I think, you know, you might have had a slight advantage starting way behind everybody because he can kind of sit back and pass everyone that had spun around, so he was able to get through. Now it looks like he scored 13th as he works down through Clubhouse there. Car looks like off track slightly. That might have been Mullen in the number 4 McLaren, the Andretti Autosport car. He's gathered it back up and will continue. Up at the front, though, Heitkotter has not been able to pull away. It's David Perro back in 2nd. We've seen this story before. Think back to Suzuka, round number 5. Didn't end with everyone super happy at the end of that. We'll see if it ends the same way today or if we'll have a nice race, competitive without contact all the way to the end.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't end with both cars pointed the right direction there for a time. They were able to get it straightened out, and it led to probably the biggest controversial moment of our season. It was Perro getting into the Nissan of Heitkotter that spun him around. Perro was handed an avoidable penalty, avoidable contact penalty, even though, that was a wild ride right there for that Audi, but even though Perro had actually given the spot back following the contact, the rules have been changed since then. So if we do see a driver relinquishing a spot gained due to contact, there's a chance that the stewards will not issue a penalty, or at least not one that is as harsh. And so hopefully we don't have to deal with that, but that is something that's different if you haven't been with us for the races subsequent to that race there at Suzuka. But Perro, Heitkotter, I think these are the two guys that have established themselves as the class of the field week in and week out over the last half of the season, and it's not a surprise to see them battling it out up front.
Keith Briscoe in the 49 was the car that you saw all sorts of sideways in turn number 15. He gathered it back up after a slight touch of the grass. Is that the 90 car of Bohm we just saw around on the back straightaway here? He's got the wall. You see the damage on the nose of that car. Let's briefly take a look and see if we can find out what happened to the number 90 of Kevin Bohm, whether or not there was a touch there of some kind. Briefly hanging up here. We'll see if we can... looks like he might have gotten a hit from JT Tammy in the 465 car. Wondering if we could go back. Can't go back any farther here, unfortunately, but Bohm head back to 18th place. That's kind of a disappointing start for him in the number 90. Ryan, we've seen him be super competitive, but disappointing to have some contact there, and he'll have to jump back a little bit to 18th spot. Meanwhile, for the race lead, Perro all over the back of Heitkotter as they head towards turn 15.
Oh boy, this is a great battle, and again, these two know each other. They've raced each other close the last couple of weeks, but never closer than that first race that we saw Perro in the championship racing at Suzuka. He is right there in the slipstream of that Nissan, and I suspect he is the faster of these two cars, but Brian's a tough guy to get past, and he's really tough to rattle, as we've seen. And one other thing that's worth keeping in mind, because the field has been whittled down a little bit, and basically this is a who's who of who's been racing with us so far this season. We're not going to have, I don't expect, as much for these leaders in terms of coming through lap traffic. I think the pace is going to be pretty good up and down this field, so that might remove some of the opportunities for passing working through lap traffic later in the race.
Down through Sunset, Perro still trails Heitkotter now by less than half of a second. It's down to 0.2 of a second into Clubhouse. You see the 111 rounding the corner here. Nelson Mason, how about this? Inside the top 10 in, I don't even know, how many laps have we done? 2, 3 laps? Mason from the back of the field to 9th in 3 laps.
Well, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but I do think we called that one. That was expected, given his pace. Second fastest in our practice session. Had to sit out qualifying because of a penalty going back to last week, but maybe that just adds to the motivation a little bit. He knows he's got a fast car. All credit to Nelson for working his way through this field cleanly to this point, and don't think he's going to ever be able to track down the leaders, given their paces. Whoa, we got to move here. It's Perro.
Perro goes through to the lead for a moment. Can Heidkotter respond? He's back on driver's right, holding him tight towards the penultimate corner, but has to get back in line. That big curb on the inside prevents him from being able to respond, but Perro goes the lead in turn number 14 and to the top spot. It's a hometown for David Perro, home track appearance for him. And this is a really good drive for him so far. He's through Heidkotter. Tom O'Gorman is about a second back from this group, and behind them is Josh Staffen, the winner from Mazzano in the number 230 Audi. So it's a very strong top four right now. John Miller in fifth right behind the Staffen car, but I don't know if this is totally done yet. Heidkotter, we've seen him get better and faster throughout a race. I think we'll see the same thing today.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for, because I want to have a great race to the finish, but Perro is looking really, really smooth. Did not have a great lap in qualifying, and I'm not sure if that was because of traffic or he's just got the car set up better here for race trim. We'll have to see, but there is always the chance that Heidkotter sitting behind might be able to learn a thing or two from Perro, who, as we talked about, is the one guy that we're pretty confident has track experience, or we do know he has track experience here. We're pretty confident he's the only one that does, and right now putting that to good use at the front of this field.
I want to keep your eye on Tom O'Gorman back in third, though. Take a look at his last lap time, a 1:42.117. That was quicker than both the drivers in front of him. I know they had to pass for a moment, but don't count out the 37 car just yet. Still very early in this race, only 8 minutes in, so there's still lots of time to see position changes. Let's jump back the field here a little bit. There's Takis Weeks in the 465. Another Nissan up the inside comes a 3 McMillan. He had spun around in turn number 1 on the opening lap. He's trying to claw his way back forward. This is for 16th spot.
Not where he expected to be battling, I think it's safe to say at this point, but doing a decent job of recovering here. 10 minutes or thereabouts into the race, still a lot of time left to go, and a top 10 is in sight, but I think that adds to the urgency. These are not long races, so you don't want to get hung up behind someone too long, because that just limits your opportunities to make up spots as the race progresses.
Oh, a bit of an off for McMillan. And that's going to let on by Kevin Anderson in the number 44 Aston Martin, so he will jump up to 17th. McMillan back to 18th place. Heidkotter now, last time by a 141.874. It was about 300ths quicker that Tom O'Gorman in third ran, so Tomo, the second quickest of the top three. Perro extending his lead by 0.3 of a second to a total of now 0.8 as they make their way onto lap number 5.
Here's a big development. Josh Staffen in fourth has been assessed a drive-through penalty. That takes away one of the contenders, one of only 3 gentlemen that have won races so far.
Oh.
Big slide from him there. That car does not look like it's handling well, and that led to being a bit of a moving chicane there for some of these other cars coming through. Miller in the Porsche and Lastry there right behind in that white Bentley. But that definitely removes Staffen from the picture, and he's one that we figured might be towards the front.
I want to take a look at Keith Briscoe. I think he's just had an incident as well, the number 49 Audi. He was a driver that started a little bit closer to the front. Let's go back and see if we can find exactly what happened, and you're actually going to see the aftermath of it here. He had dropped out kind of in the S-curves area here, and probably just lost it, maybe got too much. You see the big curb here on the right-hand side of your screen, the big apex curb. That's an easy one to hit and upset the race car, but he got back rolling, will drop all the way back to 20th position. So not the start that Keith Briscoe wanted, not the start that Staffen wanted, nor the 3 car of Nick McMillan. So bad start for a number of drivers, a good start for Perro.
It takes just a little to have your race go completely undone, and on the flip side of things, Perro's been pretty much picture perfect and is reaping the rewards running at the front of the field right here. The penalty for Staffen, we believe, stems back to the contact on lap 1 that sent that Aston around, so I think it looks like he's serving that drive-through penalty now.
Yeah, he's down on pit lane at the moment. Meanwhile, we're looking at a battle for what is 4th place. John Miller in the 38. We saw him way down the inside on the opening start of the race, and he got himself well out of harm's way by going all the way to the grass and just hugging the left-hand side, staying real tight to the apex. He got through the mess and sits 4th right now, but Tomas Lester behind him in the 717, putting pressure on him in that white Bentley.
Yeah, that's an immense amount of pressure that he's feeling. We've seen Miller maybe not qualify all that well, but he has raced well. Has had a podium. He's finished in the top 5 a couple of times, and has done so by keeping his nose clean by and large, and really having solid racecraft, which is not a surprise coming off of a championship season last year in Pirelli GT4 America's Sprint X competition. Interesting to note that that was his first championship of any kind in his entire racing career, which is surprising. He's been around for a little while, maybe not at the upper echelons, but certainly someone that is well regarded, and I was pretty stunned to discover that he hadn't put a championship run together prior to his season last year with Harry Gottsacker.
And Miller started 16th in this race, so he's come up about 12 spots, so that's a really good climb for him. Last year, real close, real tight to the rear bumper. Checking in 6th place right behind, you'll see that blue McLaren. That is Colin Mullen in the number 4. Had a pretty good start to this race in the Andretti Autosport car. Then Dakota Dickerson, he's back this week in a number 72 Bentley. We saw him in the Ferrari for pretty much every event this season, but trying out a different vehicle in the last round of the season, why not? We see a number of other drivers giving it a try, and Dickerson, no exception.
Not sure there's a bigger difference between one GT3 car and another than going from the Ferrari to the Bentley. I just can't see many similarities there, but as we talk about every week, it's one of the strengths of GT3 racing. You have so many different types of cars, and the way that the sanctioning body, the SRO, works to make sure that there's an even playing field for these different manufacturers. It's not an advantage or disadvantage necessarily on a regular basis, having a different layout or a car that frankly looks a little bit like a stylish brick, right? When you're talking about the Bentley, it's a beautiful car. It sounds great. Bentley's got a great racing pedigree, but you put it next to a Ferrari and one of them just looks faster than the other. But that's not the way it is when you get on the actual racetrack. So great job here by Dickerson adjusting to this new car. This is such a fun part of this track, twisting and turning back and forth, using all of the track that's available to him, and doing his best to try and keep up with Nelson Mason, who continues to be on a tear, already up to 7th after starting last.
Yeah, the Racers 360 Audi Niagara Motorsport car started last, as we've documented quite a bit so far this race, but continues to run lap times that are on an order of half a second to a full second faster than 3 of the 6 drivers that are in front of him. The only drivers that he did not run faster than last time were Perro, Heitkotter, and O'Gorman, the top 3 as it stands. Speaking of Heitkotter and O'Gorman, Heitkotter has lost some ground to Perro, and Tomo is actually working on him, reeling him in. He was about over a second gap. Now it's down to 9/10 between Tomo and the Asus Republica Gamers car and Heitkotter in the Nissan.
Well, I know Tomo is excited to be able to show what he could do here at the front of the field. He's put a lot of work into this weekend in particular. Not to say he didn't for some of the others, but I think his eyes were on trying to win here in this championship race, and to get pole and slip back the way that he did, I think he'll be a bit disappointed by that, although in some respects it's kind of due to the track layout here and the way that the cars are aligned at the start. But doing a really good job here so far. It's really the struggle for him has not been the speed, it's just been putting a full race together. Some of that has been misfortune, some of it has been mistakes. I'm not quite sure where the balancing line is there between the two, but quite frankly, it's not been the season I think he was expecting here in GT Rivals. But this would be a perfect way to cap it off, certainly with a podium, mixing it up with 2 of the widely respected best from the real world and sim world combined up ahead of him in Heitkotter and Perro. And if you were able to get by one or both, then boy, that would really be saying something.
Yeah, and Tomo, again, his experience in real world racing, again, TCA champion, TCB champion as well in GT World Challenge America, you think, or TC World Challenge America, I should say. It also ran a TCR car over on another series for a year in the LA Honda World 37. That's why the 37's on the side of his car today. Finished 4th in that championship, won at Daytona and Sebring. An immensely talented driver, and I'm proud to call him a friend as well. And I actually know how much effort he put into this livery for this Porsche, because he switched cars, had to paint up a new one. He was up till 4 in the morning last night working on this and was so excited. And so he cares about racing so much. And I think the pandemic especially, again, I've talked a lot with Tom, the pandemic certainly changed everyone's mindsets quite a bit, but Tom was so excited to get back to a racetrack a couple weeks ago, working at a autocrossing event. So good to see him back at a racetrack. I know he'll be out another event in Gingerbread Raceway next weekend as well. So excited to see him back out there. Excited to see his spirits pick up as race cars return to the track in real life as well. Got a bit of a battle here for 6th though. Look at Colin Mullen and Nelson Mason right behind each other.
Beautiful battle here. The McLaren of Mullen in the Andretti Autosport colors. Love looking at that race car. And Mason is so fast. You can visibly see him closing that gap as we watch this fight here. Great shot back over the really cool rear wing of this McLaren. It's just a beautiful race car. That's another one. You just look at it. It's even sitting still. It looks like it's going, 150 miles an hour. And a newer package compared to the Audi, although this Evo kit on the Audi is relatively new, but just really cool to see the diversity here, and Mason continues to put on a show for us.
Reeling him in using the slipstream now. Big bumps, see the sparks flying out from underneath the 4 car, now into the braking zone. Hard move to the right. Here comes Mason up the inside in turn number 13. Looks like he is through. Great pass there for 6th. Now he sets his sights on, that is the next car in line's Miller and Laster, 5th and 4th.
And I think there's been a change for position there. It looks like Miller has dropped back behind in that Porsche, and that was the battle we were watching a little while ago, and the Bentley has been able to move through to this point. So it looks like, yes, the next target, the next quarry for Mason is that Porsche up ahead, and I don't think it'll be too much longer given the strength of that Audi that we've seen so far.
There's Kevin Anderson in the number 44 car right behind him. Is Ben Waddell in the number 99 Bentley. That's a very brightly colored car. Sits 14th at the moment using the slipstream down the front straight. Then he's got Shimshak in behind him, as well as the 90 of Kevin Bohm. I believe Bohm is now a lap down, but still out here competing regardless of the damage that he picked up from his incident with the Lexus earlier in the race.
Well, I'd like to give a shout to Kevin once again. I think he was battling some internet issues earlier today. I saw on social media he was a bit concerned about being able to be in the field, and was able to get those rectified to the point that he was able to qualify very well, but just had that terrible start. Really not much you can do when there's that big mayhem up in front. Oh boy.
Speaking of mayhem.
Yeah.
That's what
No kidding.
And Anderson side by side. Door to door, will there be a touch? Down the hill, looks like Anderson's going to tuck it real tight. And Waddell's going to sneak on through. They were 3 wide for a moment with Shimshak trying to jam his way up the middle of all that, but they've somehow sorted it out. Move Anderson to 13th. Waddell. Oh, big dive there by Shimshak. Way late on the brakes. Crossover by Anderson. Now he's got driver's left. Change position again. Oh, a little bit of a touch there. Now they touch again on the front straightaway. Got to leave each other, or excuse me, the back straight. And I'll leave a little bit of room here, but that got really dicey.
It's not done yet either. Look at the switch back here, and the advantage just ebbs and flows depending on where on the track you are. They are still side by side. Great respect between these two so far. Oh, and now we see Bohm dropping back, as he probably should, given the situation he finds himself in.
There's JT Tammy and Josh Staffen have found themselves right in the middle of this battle as well. Anderson runs wide in the final corner, so Staffen will go on through. Now Tammy takes a look at the number 44. This is all for position. In the meantime, Carl Whitmer's number 22 Acura has been penalized for contact with the 465 of Weeks, so he will have to come serve a drive-through penalty. You see that lit up on the timing and scoring there as well. So Tammy and the Lexus taking a look at, crossover here up the inside of the 44. Anderson going the wrong direction.
It looks that way. Ooh, and had to be pretty careful. Maybe even went off course a little bit to avoid some contact there. He's been in the thick of things the last couple of minutes, and it's going to take a while, I think, to get his breath back and try and regather himself and maybe make up for some of the ground that he's lost.
Down through Sunset. Ooh, got to the grass there a little bit. Lost all the front grip. Going to run a little bit wide. Gathers it back up just in time. Will fall back to, looks like, 17th place. Let's jump up the road to John Miller, because now he's got a rear view mirror full of Mason. Porsche versus Audi now. Mason's got a great run.
He sure does. It's taken him a little longer than I expected to run him down, quite frankly, but it's just going to get harder and harder the closer he gets to the front. Takes a peek there to the outside, and now a little bit of a later apex, diving there to the apex of the corner. Can't find a place to make the move on Miller so far. Miller's a crafty veteran, no doubt about it, a GT racing veteran as well, where Mason's got more experience in the single-seater ranks.
Now throttling up onto this very long front straight with his slipstream's going to help here. The Porsche, a little bit taller of a race car when compared to the Audi, so that's going to help produce that bigger wake behind the leading Porsche here. So that's going to put Mason in that that aero gap underneath the rear wing and all that spoil there. So Mason closes up into the braking zone for turn 2, right behind the 38. So still working over for 5th spot up the road. Heidkotter has slightly closed back on Perro that lap through. He's 6/10ths back from the leading 111 Ferrari.
Yeah, I was looking at that too, as a matter of fact. I was going to bring that up next, so I'm not sure if this might be traffic related. You see some back markers up ahead, and maybe that's been part of the equation here, but there's no doubt Heidkotter has closed in, and he's not going to let go of this easily. That's a fast driver with a lot to prove. He's won so many of these races, 5 of them, in fact. And well, if we had a points-paying structure, whoa, big spin of the Bentley up ahead.
That would be the 8 car of Guy Cosmo. Just having a bit of a moment there. You see the white flag waving for the slow-moving vehicle. He'll get that car back on track. The hood sort of dislocated there on the nose of that car. He'll pull off. That's a frustrating way to end the championship for the 8 car of Guy Cosmo. I know he's put in a lot of time and effort into these races and just hasn't had the luck that he's needed.
Yeah, he's had some better results in recent weeks. It took a while to get the luck to fall his way, but unfortunately that's just the way it's gone for him to some degree so far this season. And like you said, the last race of the season, not a great way to wrap up the championship. Here's Mason. He's made the pass on Miller. He's got Lastry up ahead and the Bentley to try and track down now, and some work to do to try and get there. But Mason's charge from the back to the front continues at top 5. I'm not sure I would have told you that I felt like that was a realistic option for him, even with his pace starting at the back. But he did get a bunch of those cars really easily when they were flying off to either side of the track, and he was able to sneak through at the very start. That probably helped, and still has a chance, I'd say, to get up to 4th. It'll be tough to run down the top 3, which have really done a nice job of separating themselves.
Merrill had to come serve a drive-through. He was 9th at the time. He had contact with Christian Shimshak, so he will have to come to pit lane and serve that. He has already done so and comes out behind the 87 of Shimshak, so all is right in the motorsports world as it stands. Leader still Perro by 7/10ths of a second, but it is starting to come down. Lap times consistently now equal. Last time by for Perro, 141.9 to Heidkotter's 142.0, but they are pretty much trading blows back and forth, and Tomo's right on pace as well. So the front 3 all pretty much exactly identical as they stand.
Yeah, really fast, really consistent. These 3 guys have elevated themselves above the rest of the field, at least to this point. I think Mason's got the pace to run with them, but he's obviously quite a ways back, as we talked about. Quickly, to wrap up the point I was making about Heidkotter a few moments ago, if we had a points-paying championship, ooh, that was interesting, he would have won the title many, many weeks ago, but we don't. It's all settled here with one championship race, and that opens the door for any number of people, and right now, Perro's the one who's kind of forced his way through that door with his passive Heidkotter earlier in the race, and Brian has just 35 minutes to try and find a way back past.
Almost to halfway in this race, but we are seeing Heidkotter start to tick off a little bit faster laps. Last time through, run a 141.871, which was 3/10ths better than Perro. Tomo ran a 142.2, so now we're starting to see some separation between 2nd and 3rd, and the gap closing between 1st and 2nd. Now down through sunset, as you see the sun getting lower in the sky, we're not going to run into the evening here, just the late afternoon. We'll end around 4 p.m. Local time here in Johannesburg, South Africa, but Heidkotter's got 35 minutes. The clock is ticking, and this is basically rules reversed from Suzuka from a few weeks ago.
That's a good point. That's a really good point, actually. Perro had a lot of experience running behind Brian, sizing him up and trying to find a weakness, and this is not a view that Heidkotter has had much this season. Certainly not behind Perro, but behind anybody, really, other than lap traffic. He spent so much time out in front, but he's been learning. I'm sure he's been going to school, and the thing that has made him so successful has been the fact that he's been able to put together clean races from start to finish without any kind of major errors. And Perro's going to be a hard one to rattle because he's kind of that same mold. A great sim racing background in addition to his real racing accolades. I think this figures to be a battle royale between these 2 guys who are really masters of this craft.
I'm really curious to see how Heidkotter attacks this because, I think Heidkotter is going to try to race Perro as clean as possible. I think that's a given. We know Heidkotter's been clean, is probably more than anybody else this season because he's been up front, hasn't had to pass a lot of cars. But think back to Suzuka when Perro got the penalty. There was a lot of internal discussion about whether or not he should have received it. There was a lot of fans that were saying, oh, he gave the spot back, there shouldn't have been a penalty. And the general consensus was that there was a general sort of agreement there. So I think Highcutter is maybe going to feel a little bit safer about being aggressive, knowing that if he makes a mistake, there might be a little bit of leeway coming back the other way. So that didn't happen when Perro was attacking Highcutter. It may happen today. We'll see if any leeway is given. We'll just hope that they leave the paint on each other's cars alone, though.
Well, we certainly know that the stewards have been told to treat those instances differently, and this does give you a bit more leeway to be aggressive because you know if there is contact, as long as you give, it's not egregious for one, and then B, you give the driver you make contact with the spot back, then really there should not be any sanction or any kind of major sanction based on the way that that rule is being interpreted now post-Suzuka. But the difference is this week, unlike that race at Suzuka, you have a third-place car that's still in the picture. Tom O'Gorman is there. So if those two do have contact and they have to wait for one another to get started, Tomo is in prime position to sneak past and pick up that lead. Whereas when they came together at Suzuka, there was no one in the vicinity. And so they kind of sorted it out amongst themselves pre-penalty and even still held first and second and were not troubled the rest of the way.
It's a good point to bring up. I mean, Tomo has fallen off a little bit on lap times. We've seen actually last time by, Perro was only about a 10th off his best lap. Tomo's down to about low 142s, which is about a half a second off of where he was earlier, but he's still in the area that would grant him the lead if these front two were to tangle. Now some lap traffic, that's the 333 of Oulet in the Mercedes, and Oulet looks like he's going to pull over and let these drivers on through. Will not be a factor. Briefly, before this gets too wild up front, let's jump back to Dirk Grunfeld in the BMW, this orange pumpkin spice M6. He's got Kenny Murillo behind him, two orange cars nose to tail. Grunfeld, another CMS driver we've seen run very well. Think back to Mizano earlier in the season, had a pretty good run there, but sits inside the top 10 right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. He actually finished second at Spa as well, so has had some good results. He's actually German-born, but now lives in the States, moved from Germany in 2002, lives in Seattle, Washington, and drives a BMW as his daily driver. Also, I'm told, owns a 2005 Lotus Elise, and that BMW that he has actually is a look-alike of a BMW from the DTM with a very famous, shall we say, liquor brand with a stag on the front of it. that livery should be familiar to others who have followed the DTM over the years. So maybe that's why we see the orange car here for him in the sim racing world as well. But doing a great job, like you said, keeping Kenny Murillo behind him, and Kenny's been one of our faster competitors week in and week out. Not sure what happened to him in qualifying, but he, like Mason, had to start towards the back and has done a good job to come up through the field and is challenging for a spot in the top 10.
Another one of the drivers that has really embraced this and used this as an opportunity to improve his sim racing skills, and he's done an amazing job with it. His run had some really fast pace and has run extraordinarily well, and a little bit of an off there as you see him head through turn 15, but I've been super impressed with Murillo this season, and good to see him out here competing with these esports competitors as they run nose to tail. Halfway through this race, 30 minutes marks halfway. We're got about 30 minutes left in this event. Perro, Highcutter, O'Gorman, Laster, Mason, your top 5 as we hit 30 minutes.
Well, it's been an entertaining battle so far, and I'm really curious about this fight for the lead. I'm not sure that Highcutter has the pace, the outright pace, just to sweep past Perro based on what we've seen. I think it's going to take traffic. I think it's going to take forcing some kind of mistake, but boy, that's going to be tough to do. Perro is absolutely where you want to be. This guy is flying. Nelson Mason, what a star he's been here today. Up to 5th, and you can see his quarry is in sight. He's reeled him in. Not much further to go. P4 just up the road.
Accelerating off now down the hill, and using the slipstream to his advantage once again. This low slung Audi really does well on the straightaways here, closing in on the Bentley. And look at how much time he gains in the braking zones, how much more aggressive he's being. I'm really curious what he's doing with the ABS. I think he's got ABS. I think I see a 2 on the dashboard display there, so that's pretty low. So he's able to threshold brake this car pretty deep into the braking zones. A lot of drivers will lean on that ABS. It's very solid, the programming that goes behind it. But I think in the sim racing world, a lot of times you like to have that extra control. As you see, last year, actually going to let Mason on by. That's an interesting strategy.
Really interesting. I'm quite surprised by that, to be entirely honest, but maybe he knows that Mason's on the move and doesn't want to impede his progress. Maybe he can learn a little bit running behind him. So let's see. It looks like it's about 10 seconds, right, to get from where Mason is running now to run down Tom O'Gorman for the podium. With the kind of pace he's had, maybe it's not out of the question. It's going to be tough. What an accomplishment that would be if he's even able to get up within sight of O'Gorman, given where he started this race.
That would be, and I don't even know how to describe that. That would be incredible.
You and me both.
I mean, we have not seen anything like that at all in GT Rivals. And again, this is our last race of this season. You know, there may be more on the horizon, but you never know for sure. So embracing this opportunity, these drivers have done so. Tomo's still sitting third, but up to the race lead once again. 0.4 of a second. It's been pretty even the last few laps, but Heidkotter, is he saving something here, Ryan? Waiting for a little bit later in the race and maybe cooling off his tires, make another run at Perro.
Yeah, you can't put it past him, that's for sure. I mean, there's no reason to force the issue yet. Still half of this race left to go, right? Plenty of time to get it done. This is perhaps about saving the equipment, making sure you still have the Pirelli rubber under you when it comes time to make a charge for the win a little bit later. Maybe it's still just a matter of figuring out the opponent, where the weaknesses might reside, if there are any, and where you might be able to make a move. But this will change. We'll know more in the next 10 minutes, I'd say. If he's still in this range where he is right now, I'd say he still has a chance. But if he starts dropping off here much further back than he is, it's getting up now close to a second. Last time they checked, the last scoring loop, 7.788 seconds back behind. If that starts to grow much more, it'll really take some kind of misfortune for Perro or some kind of intervention from lap traffic, I think, for Heidkotter to get in. Perro's looking very strong here at this stage.
So with 26, make that 27 minutes to go, check the right-hand side of your screen and make sure that you enter to win the Asus ROG Fanatec SimLab Mega Bundle. Link is in the chat. There's also a copy of Assetto Corsa Competizione available for you guys to try this amazing racing simulation. So make sure you give yourself a chance to win that amazing bundle of things. And I want to personally thank Asus for really, they've done a lot of giveaways, right? We've done 8 weeks of this, and they've been a participant in the giveaways every single week, which is unbelievable. I mean, they've given away quite a bit of stuff, and it's been really cool to see them interact and be a big part of this Assetto Corsa Competizione GT Rivals Championship.
Yeah, I couldn't do it without their support, and they've really jumped in to help some of these drivers as well at various times, and haven't asked for any publicity for it, but I know it's happened behind the scenes, and we're certainly thankful for that. Great to have them on board, all the partners that have come on board, and I think all of us with SRO America have kind of had our eyes opened at the potential that exists with sim racing. We're certainly grateful for the partnership with the Kunos folks, who are the developers behind Assetto Corsa Competizione. What a remarkable tie-in that they give us with the official sim of GT World Challenge, and this sim has been so well received. It looks and sounds so good, and it's really put on a great show. It's been a perfect platform for us here in GT Rivals.
Sounds are really my favorite thing about this sim,
Me too.
It puts you at the racetrack at a time when no one could go. You can load up Assetto Corsa Competizione and you can sit in the paddock area and really feel, you know, I spend most of my time in the sim spectating and watching other people, and it just feels like you're on pit lane. So it's really an incredible experience here. Nelson Mason, let's talk about him for a second. We talked about him quite a bit, but his lap times, Finian Dakuna behind the scenes telling us Mason was the fastest car of the track last lap by 0.3 over the race leader. He is now 8.9 seconds back with 24 minutes to go. I don't think it's out of the question. It's going to be really tough, but I think it's possible.
It certainly is, and he's going to be aware of that gap. He knows that he's fast. He knows he's closing it in, and I have to suspect maybe a little red mist is creeping in as well. Thinking about what might have been if he didn't have to start at the back of the race, back of the pack here at the start of this race, due to a penalty that carried over from last week at Bathurst, because this Audi has been hooked up through all the practices. Didn't get to see it in qualifying, but I suspect he would have been right there at the pointy end. Maybe to some degree it helps him, just because we saw outside of the front row it was kind of a crapshoot for everybody else getting through the start. They took out a bunch of really good cars right away, and maybe he would have been in that mix. Well, we never will know, but he's done the best he can given the situation. And what I've been most impressed with is how clean that car still looks, because he's come through a lot of traffic. He came through that opening wreck, and we never have seen any contact. We've never seen him put a wheel wrong. It's been a really great race from him to this point.
Not a scratch on it. Let's jump briefly back to this little battle here. 10th place, Dirk Grunfeld has just lost a spot to Kenny Murillo, so put Murillo up to P10, Grunfeld back to 11th, and Ben Waddell in 12th of the 99, and there's Christian Shimshak. So that's 4 cars, 10th through 13th, all fighting for position.
Meanwhile, Perro has put that lead back up to nearly a second with a personal best the last time by. But this is a great battle to keep an eye on here. Great to see Kenny jump into the top 10. It's such a cool story. His dad was an up-and-coming open-wheel racer and just didn't quite have the brakes to make it at the highest levels, and has done a great job working with this Murillo Racing team that he's put together. And Kenny's kind of been a track rat coming up through his younger years, and he's been a fixture in the paddock, and now has turned himself into a very good driver as well, racing touring cars primarily. Did a little bit of GT4 racing last year in a select number of the Pirelli GT4 America Sprint X West Championship along with Christian Shimshak, and shows that he's got the chops behind the wheel. But when he's not driving, he's the team's data engineer, so he can really provide a lot of input to the race team, whether or not he's in the seat or if he's in the engineering role, and clearly showing how capable he is behind the wheel of the sim. And I suspect he's done quite a bit of sim racing in his days.
So Grunfeld back to 11th. Waddell, Shimshak, going to keep our eyes on this battle as we do continue to keep our eyes on the lead one as well. And again, it's actually gone back in the other direction. Again, Perro, a 141.511. I'm not sure if that was just now, if that was just his PB, if he's done it 2 laps in a row, or if that was the one that Finina was telling us about. But either way, his laps have really picked up. He's put Brian Heitkotter now back beyond a second. Tom O'Gorman's fallen 4.3 off the pace. Mason has still continued to gain time, although he did lose a little bit last lap. So a 8.3 second gap from Perro, or excuse me, from Tomo to Mason. So still time for sure for Mason to get there. But also Mullen, he has Dakota Dickerson behind him. We haven't talked about Dickerson a lot yet today in the Bentley, other than the switch that he's made, but here he is for 7th.
Yeah, great job by him in the Bentley. We talked about him briefly because he's made the switch from the Ferrari over to the Bentley, which, among other things, provides a different perspective. I've talked about this in previous weeks, but it's a right-hand drive car, and that takes a little bit of time to get used to as he takes a plunge to the inside of the McLaren. Mullen able to shut the door on him, and the two were able to carry on without making contact. That was a hairy moment there.
Yeah. Almost looked like a mistake.
Yeah, almost. These two are 2 of the real up-and-coming youngsters. One on the sports car side of things now in Colin, and then Dakota really in the open-wheel ranks, racing in some of the F4 and F3 championships, and has his eyes on continuing to climb that ladder. But fun to see them duking it out here, because I think we might see them doing this on a real track for years to come, especially if Dakota ends up doing more sports car racing. He's done some, but right now I think the eyes are on making the open wheel thing work, but I think sports cars would be a welcome career for him if that's the decision he decides to take.
So Dickerson continues to run around in 8th place right now. Checking in on our race leader. Whoa, big slide there from Mullen on corner exit. Perro, last time by a 141.7. Heitkotter a 142.3, which puts him now 2 seconds behind Perro. Wow. So he has found another gear and is absolutely obliterating Heitkotter in the lap time game right now.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you're watching Days of Thunder or whatever, and they decide they need to go faster, so they just shift a gear, and that's exactly what it looks like Perro has done. Really impressive to see this continued pace. He just gets faster and faster, and you expect that to some degree as the fuel load burns off, but you also have to factor in tire deg, and it seems like this Ferrari is just perfectly balanced, perfectly set up. The tire wear seems to be negligible, and he continues to put in fast lap after fast lap.
Really impressive. Less than 20 minutes to go, though. We're starting to get down to the very end of this thing, so if Heidkotter wants to catch Perro, he's got to find his own other gear as they come across the line. Let's see what the time is for Perro. A 1:42.2. He had to deal with some lap traffic. A 1:42.1 for Heidkotter, so slightly better, but he's going to need to do more than that. Tom O'Gorman, a 1:41.9, so he's found a little bit of pace, but he hasn't had the consistency that the front two have had. But again, I think a podium, if he could hang on to this, would be a really solid day. I think he'd be proud of that.
Yeah, but the if is still hovering above him because this guy is on a charge. That gap has continued to shrink. It's down under 7.5 seconds. Not sure there's enough time left, but still plenty of things can happen between now and the end of this race, so I'm not going to discount it. But man, this has been super impressive. I know we've talked about it a ton, and I'm sorry for the redundancy, but I just am blown away.
Battle for 8th place. That's Dakota Dickerson, who has it, and Nick McMillan that wants it. Think back to the very beginning of this race. McMillan was turned around in the first corner and ended up having to fight back from with a little bit of damage to that car, but here he sits inside the top 10 with 18 minutes to go. I think this would be a good recovery drive for him, but he's got at least 2 more spots in sight that he can grab.
That's a great point. Yeah, that the race did not start well for him at all, and he has inserted himself into this battle between these two youngsters, Mullen and Dickerson, and this changes the equation now for Dickerson, who was just in pure-on attack mode until a few moments ago when McMillan arrived on the scene, and now he's got to be both defensive and aggressive as he tries to find a way past Mullen for the 7th spot.
McLaren, Bentley, and Aston Martin got 3 British manufacturers all nose to tail here.
Good point.
As they work together. I think that's all of them, isn't it? Am I missing any? There's no MG GT3 out there, is there?
There is not.
I want to see that. That's what I want to see. As Mullen goes a little bit defensive. He's got Dickerson in behind him. A little bit offline for Dickerson, trying to take a look. That's going to leave him vulnerable here, though. To the Aston. Door shut for McMillan. Has to back out, try again.
Yep, exactly so. Good patience on display here. Ooh, might have an opportunity now. Maybe not. Looked like the car we're on board with ran wide just a little bit. Look how close they come right there as they come out onto the pit straight. In the slipstream, there might be a chance at the end of this.
And that Bentley punches a big hole in the air, but it's also got a lot of motor in it. And McMillan is going to have to back out, try this again. He's going to swing out way wide to driver's right, try to over-under the 72-1 corner exit. A little bit of a wiggle and a wobble by Dickerson. But McMillan pretty much dead even with him as they climb the hill.
We're taking a look to the inside here. I think that's more about showing the nose and trying to force a mistake than anything else. And it did look like that Bentley got squirrely on exit. And that's allowed Mullen to make his escape, at least for now, building that gap a little bit up over a second. So it's gone from attack mode to something in the middle to pure on defense now for Dickerson, who's got his mirrors full of this Aston Martin.
McMillan's being aggressive with the 2. He's showing the nose and forcing Dickerson offline, which has distracted him enough to let Mullen pull away in the 7th place number 4 car. So Mullen trying to run while he can, while these two kind of engage in their little bit of a dogfight back here for 9th place, or make that 8th rather. With 15 minutes to go, Perro leads by 1.5 seconds over Brian Heidkotter. Mason has chopped the gap from about 9 seconds down to 6.5 between himself and 3rd place podium driver Tom O'Gorman.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that gap, and if it gets close enough, we'll make a switch there. But this is a fantastic fight right in the thick of the field here in the top 10. A lot of pride on the line here, and what's awesome about this is even though this is not for the lead, there's still a lot to race for, and these guys are having a blast. I have no doubt, sizing each other up. They're learning all the time and putting on a show for us here. This is where we saw McMillan have a shot the last time by. I don't know if he's closer. He seems to be a little bit further back this time. We'll see if he can make a move.
I'll admit, I had never seen a race at this racetrack until this afternoon, and I have to say, it is an extraordinary racetrack. Whoa, Dickerson goes way wide, and through goes McMillan. That was easy.
Yeah.
Well, so that kind of ends that battle for now. But as I was saying, this track, I've never seen a race here before, and I'm just amazed at how much these drivers are able to run side by side, and the switchbacks and left and right and sweeping corners really make for a very compelling, entertaining motorsport event this afternoon. So I've been really happy with this particular racetrack. I'll definitely have to catch it on the GT World channel when we return there in the real world to see the Intercontinental GT Challenge.
Schedule is for November, but as everyone knows, motorsport schedules right now are a bit up in the air, but that is the planned finale for the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli. We found out recently the Suzuka round was canceled due to complications from the coronavirus pandemic, and I think there's some effort being made to try and find a replacement round for that, so that's why we say tentatively Kyalami is supposed to be the final race of the season for the IGTC. We'll have to wait and see, but like...
Oh, touch! That's Grunfeld around off the bumper of Shimshak, and that was a little naughty there. Let's go back and take a look.
Yeah, I think the stewards are going to take a close look at this one, and there might be some action taken. That was a double contact there, unfortunately. Got the spin and then into the door as well. Let's take a look.
So this is back a little ways, so we're going to ride on board here and kind of watch the lead up to this. And we're kind of watching Grunfeld. I didn't think that he had thrown a block or anything that would aggravate Shimshak in any sort of way. I imagine it was just a mistimed braking point for the 87, but either way, intent aside, late brake right here, just gets on the brakes too late, and it just isn't able to back out in time, and then the double whammy gets him in the door. It actually did damage the front of Shimshak's car a little bit as we head back live now, and we'll try to get a bit of a better look at this here in a moment, but there is some damage to the nose of that number 87 car.
And I think that's probably going to be academic here before too much longer, because I expect there to be a drive-through for that. And yeah, anything you lose from the damage, it hurts you, but any chance of a good finish is pretty much gone at this point.
Yeah, you're going to see right here, the right on the nose, there's right above the hood line, there is definitely some significant damage there. That is going to slow this car down in a straight line, and again, as you mentioned, the penalty, he'll get a chance to come down, and I think any top 15 run that he had going is going to be pretty much over, unfortunately. So 12 minutes to go, back up to the front. Perro, the 111 car, has led the majority of this race, but it's not over yet. We've got 12 minutes left. 2 seconds is the gap between Perro and Heidkotter. Is there lap traffic maybe out there that could spice this up a little bit?
Could be. That's what Brian Heidkotter is hoping for. That was a great shot of him coming over that hill there on that straightaway, and you could see the sign in the background for the Coach Dave Academy, and that is, of course, Perro's business. He does a lot of sim racing coaching. You can go to him and buy some setups as well that'll help you get up to speed. I know many of the competitors here have used his service. You can see right there, Coach Dave Academy. So cool to see him heavily involved in sim racing. Of course, busy racing in GT World Challenge Europe this year with Renat Salikov and Kessel Racing. They have big plans this year, assuming everything gets going as planned. I know he's proud to fly those Kessel colors here in the game as well as he does in real life.
Colin Mullen has just lost a spot to Nick McMillan. So McMillan moves up into 7th. He had gotten by Dickerson in turn 2 a few laps ago, and then by Mullen momentarily, or last moment ago rather. 11.5 minutes to go, as Mullen tries to respond to McMillan's pass there, but now he's got Dickerson in behind him, so these two will kind of resume their fight, but a position down from where they were about 10 minutes ago.
Exactly so. We'll see if maybe Dickerson learns something from his efforts to try and keep McMillan behind. He can try and apply that same kind of pressure and force an error from Mullen. We'll see what he can do. This is Tomo running a kind of lonely third, unfortunately for him. He was right there with the top 2. Remember, qualified on pole, but got shuffled back to third right off the start, and then was able to hang with the leaders for the first third of the race or so, and just slowly has fallen back. It seems like the handling might have gone off a little bit and just doesn't have the same pace that both Perro and Heidkotter have displayed, and Mason is the one now trying to track him down, and he's in the back of that shot. He's getting closer. He's behind the lap car of Ulay. Right there, that white Audi. If he can get past this lap traffic, that's the only thing that separates him from a step on the podium after starting dead last here today.
Still 5 seconds that he has to make up in 10 minutes, so he's got to make up basically a half a second a lap. The problem for Tomo is that that's pretty much the gap that Mason had over Tomo last lap by. It was a 141.5 for Mason, basically a 142 flat for Tomo, a 141.99. So if Mason continues at that pace, he will at least have time to get there, plus the lap. So we'll keep our close eye on that. Drive through for Shimshek, expected for the contact there with Grunfeld, but he'll have to come in and relinquish a 13th place running position.
Looks like he's in the pit lane now, so sorry to see that, but I do think the penalty was warranted based on what we saw. You can see the damage there, and that really tells the tale. So sad finish to the season for Christian, who really burst onto the scene when he joined us for his first race at Spa and put the car on pole. He's had some good runs, just hasn't had the win he's been looking for, but I think it's been fun having him as part of the championship as we look back from Mullen once again here on Dakota Dickerson, the battle for 8th.
This continues as we're inside 10 minutes to go. And Dickerson trying to just grab one more spot. Mullen just trying to hang on to this position. They're pretty equal in lap times. Dickerson was slightly slower last time by, but you see he's reeled in some of that gap between him and the blue McLaren. I came back in on Highcutter. A 1.5 differential. He was 2.5 tenths quicker than Perro last time by.
Yeah, it's going to be tough even to catch Perro. Even if that was to continue, he wouldn't be able to catch him, and then at that point you still have to pass him. So with less than 10 minutes to go, Perro is in prime position here. Don't want to put any kind of curse on him or anything like that. He deserves a win with the pace we've seen out of him. I think he's had the performance for it the last handful of weeks, just for various reasons it hasn't fallen his way, and it seems like maybe things are coming together for him here on virtual home turf in South Africa.
Well, some lap traffic. That is the number 64, Chris Forsberg. He's going to move off to the right and go off into the gravel trap. That's going to let both the leaders on through. And now Highcutter did take advantage of that slightly. He did gain about a 1.5 through there. But again, as you mentioned, I just don't think it's going to be enough. And we've seen the dominance of Highcutter all season long. 5 of the 8 rounds belong to Highcutter as a race winner. But I think towards the halfway point of the season, we had started to see the field getting stronger and stronger. And there were a couple races that Highcutter won, the last 2, I believe, that he really wasn't the dominant car. I don't want to say it really fell into his lap, but there were a few cars that got penalties that could have or would have beat him. So Highcutter, I think the dominance it was impressive, but now we're really seeing what Perro was capable of the whole time at his home track. And he look at the closing right now, less than a second. Maybe I should stop talking.
Yeah, all of a sudden the whole narrative of this race has changed. Where has this come from? Highcutter has closed it down. It was up over 2 seconds not that long ago, and suddenly it's under a second.
Oh boy.
Under 0.7 of a second, and he is there. So foolish me discounting him. Aren't I always the one telling you, Kyle, don't be worried, he's gonna have the pace when we watch the practice, and he's down there in 12th or something, and then ups to the top right at the very end. This is kind of his style. Boy, what a show he's putting on for us here. If he was able to get there and they were able to fight to the finish, that's the dream finish to GT Rivals, isn't it?
Well, they don't call it GT1 guys who win the whole thing. They call it GT Rivals, Ryan. So, and there's a rivalry. If there's a rivalry between any 2 drivers in this entire field, it's between these 2. I mean, obviously Suzuka was really the culmination of all of it. But I think that these 2 have really been on equal pace every week, and Perro just didn't have the track position to compete, but they are right on top of each other now, and I just take back everything I said about Highcutter's lack of dominance this week, because he's right here, and these 2 have both been dominant in recent weeks.
Yeah, it brings a smile to my face to see this battle for the lead close up. This is the perfect way to end this. Let's just do it cleanly here, boys. No repeats of Suzuka. No Suzuka 2.0, please. Don't need the stewards to get involved. Settle it for yourselves out there. But I think you make a great point. These 2 have been consistently, since David joined, and remember, he hasn't been with us from the start. Brian has, but since he came to the championship, if you're looking for the consistent, fastest guys, it's these 2, even though maybe the results don't necessarily indicate that for David. If you've watched the races, you've known how fast he has been. This has been just kind of demonstrative of the pace that these two have shown over the course of the season. It's a microcosm of that here in the 60 minutes that we've had in South Africa. 5 minutes to go. Heitkater is there. Does he have anything for him, though, to make the pass? That's the question that we need answering, and we don't have much time to do it.
Well, Tom O'Gorman still sitting back a couple seconds from all this, about 5 seconds back from Heitkater, just hoping and praying that these two do Suzuka Part 2. We're hoping that it stays clean and green. What I'm hoping here is that we get Suzuka Part 2, and then we get Tomo and Nelson Mason in this, and have a four-way battle to the finish. That might be a bit wishful, but under 5 to go, and Heitkater is right here. Did lose a little bit of ground this lap. I think Perro kind of got back up on the horse, so to speak, but it's far from over.
One thing I'd be curious to see is if we can bring any kind of relative screen up to see if they have any lap traffic up ahead that they might have to deal with. It looks pretty clear to me. You can see that change now there on the left. I don't think they're going to catch anybody. How about you?
Well, 8 seconds to Kevin Anderson in the 44. Take a look at the 44's last lap time. It was a 1:44.5. That's about 2 seconds off pace. We're going to be about, 3 laps to go this time through? I think it's possible that they might catch Kevin Anderson. I don't think they'll catch anybody else. And I don't think Anderson would like to be right in the middle of all this. So I imagine he would get out of the way. We're going to find out, though. 4 minutes to go.
Well, any of the print journalists covering this race, and I suspect there were a few, if they did any pre-writing, you can probably throw that out the window at this point, because it looked like Perro was off to the races, just in cruise control.
Oh, he's right there! He's right there!
It's anything but now. Here is Heitkater pouring the pressure on David Perro. Can the South African hold on and win on home soil?
Oh, I really think Heitkater is pushing his rear tires. You can almost sense riding on board the rear tires stepping out, the Pirellis giving up the grip that they have left, and he's been using these tires. Look at him sliding the front of that car. He's using every bit of rubber left on those Pirellis to chase down Perro. He's right there. He's close enough now, Ryan. He just needs to make one lunge just to spook Perro out of making an effort to get to the apex, and it's going to be a race for the race lead here.
I really wonder if these guys are thinking at all right now about what happened at Suzuka, or if they are totally focused on what's happening here in the moment. And most likely that is the case, although I suspect it's crossed their minds a little bit. Remember that coming together and what a controversy it was. Heitkater, though, dropping off just a little bit here. Perro's done a nice job not to panic when all of a sudden that gap has disappeared and seems to be back in his rhythm a little bit now.
Right here, this is where Heitkater gains all this time, is in the final sector. Real tight through 13, then through 14 and 15, and that's the quick right-hander with the big curb on the inside right here, and Heitkater gains a lot of time right there. Perro is having to be a little bit more cautious about it because the Ferrari, I don't think, is quite as good as absorbing bumps as the Nissan is. So he's right there, 2-3 back. He's a little wide in the final corner. This will be 2 laps to go this time by from Kyalami.
Don't think that was the final corner he needed to be able to get a run. You could see Perro was legging him out there for a little bit. Now the slipstream has negated some of that, but still too far back to make a lunge into what is technically turn 2 here on the Kyalami circuit. Heitkater's going to have to settle back in line and try and reel in the prancing horse.
I don't think that Heitkater needs to get up alongside him at all. I think he just needs to get within a tenth, within a car length, and that'll be able to spook. If you can just move over out of the mirrors of David Perro, you can spook him. And Perro's a professional. He knows that's the strategy that Heitkater is going to do. But it doesn't make you feel any better when you see that car disappear out of your mirror right as you head into the braking zone. It makes you second guess yourself. And that split-second decision of second guessing yourself, that is the difference between making an apex and missing an apex that'll give Heitkater the opportunity to snag a race victory here.
Yeah, realistically, that's probably what it's going to take. I don't think that just in terms of being able to pull up alongside and make an outbraking maneuver, I'm not sure that there's enough in that Nissan to do that, given how fast the Ferrari has proven to be. However, maybe you're right. If you can force a little bit of a miscue, you can force a miscalculation just on some doubt creeping into the mind, losing sight of the Nissan in the mirrors, maybe that's the chance to make the play. But who knows? Still several opportunities, but time's starting to run out here on Heitkater.
48 seconds to go. Next time by will be the final lap Over the curbs in turn number 15. A bit of an off for Perro. He drags the tires in the dirt. Lap traffic ahead. Final corner of the penultimate lap. Here we come. White flag. One more lap to go in the 2020 GT Rivals Esports Invitational. Heitkotter has won 5 of 8 races this season. If he can grab 4 more tenths, he could win 6. Perro trying to get a victory here at his home track. Into turn number 2. 20 seconds to go. The white flag will fly. And now all of his focus goes to keeping that big white Nissan behind him.
But lap traffic up ahead, he's going to have to spare some of that focus on trying to find a way past, and to do so in a way that's not going to affect him, cause him to have to lose any momentum and open the door. Hopefully the lap traffic is aware these are the leaders coming through on the white flag lap, and they don't hold him up. We'll see. Oh, hairy stuff here.
Perro all the way out to the track edge, into the braking zone for Clubhouse. A bit of a lazy turn in there behind the 44 car, looking off the rear bumper. Look how close Heitkotter is. He's still got lap traffic in front of him, going through the gears, adjusting the ABS, adjusting the traction control, trying to find every semblance of grip that he can as they head up the hill now. Less than half a lap to go. Heitkotter is there. He's right on the rear bumper. Now 2/10, half a car length here as they head to the final sector.
I think that lap car did hold him up a little bit, but was able to let them both by in a fairly equitable way. I don't think it really had a huge impact on the way this last lap is going to play out, which is the way we like it.
Couple corners left. Perro, this has been his weakest sector here. Into the braking zone. Heitkotter going to use every bit of the Pirellis. Perro's going to run wide. Here comes Heitkotter to the inside. Big run here as they head to 13 and 14. One more sweeping right, then a left. Final corners of the GT Rivals Esports Championship. Heitkotter is there. Perro goes defensive for a moment. Now back to driver's right. Into the final corner, turn 16. A run back to the front straight. David Perro, home track, home race. He comes on through, and it's a race victory for David Perro. From South Africa, he wins the final race of the 2020 GT Rivals Esports Invitational. An unbelievable drive by him and Brian Heitkotter. So close, Ryan, but not quite close enough.
What a finish that was. Just that little mistake from Perro. Basically the only one we saw from him all race long, but he was able to recover. Great job by him. Heitkotter pouring on the pressure, did absolutely everything you could hope for in terms of trying to chase him down, and did so cleanly. And here's Tomo celebrating a hard-won podium. He brings that Porsche home third, and Mason, the drive of the day, to come home fourth.
Tomo celebrating big time. I know he's going to be absolutely thrilled. I'm sure he would have liked to have won this race after starting on pole, but a podium is going to be like a victory to him, and I'm sure he'll be super excited when we get to talk to him a little bit later. Nelson Mason, though, what an incredible drive that he had from the back of the pack to a top 5 result. 4th place for him. If this was a 2-hour race, I think he would have been capable of winning it, but comes home P4.
Yeah, no doubt. He was super, super fast coming from the back. Was up inside the top 15 in just one lap after starting 27th, I think it was. And just from there was fast and clean. Great recovery. What might have been, if he didn't have that penalty and he could have qualified, I think he would have been a race win, contender for a race win. Instead, he'll have to settle for 4th, but I think it's pretty clear he let everyone know he was here.
There is a look at your race results, and you can see the Champion Motorsports drivers all sort of focused around 12th to 15th there. Tammy Grunfeld, Briscoe, Weeks all together. Then there's Kevin Anderson Ulay in the 20th place position in the 333, and Lastra in the number 717 comes home with a top 5 in his Bentley Continental GT3. Good run for him. Mullen back in 9th, Kenny Murillo in 10th. But looking down at the bottom of the order here, some disappointments. Staffen, Cosmo, not really a race that they wanted. Grahovic didn't really have an amazing race. Neither did Carl Whitmer with that penalty that he earned for the avoidable contact. 17th place for the Mount Panorama winner from last week.
That might be the biggest disappointment on this list, and he never really was a factor at Kyalami for whatever reason. The penalty was part of it, but we didn't really see him up towards the top like we've come to expect in the practice session, and didn't qualify terribly well. So a shame to see that, because he had such a good run. I think this is his only finish outside the top 10, in fact, in 8 races. So just tells you how consistent he was over the course of our GT Rivals season, and a real shame that that couldn't continue here in the final round.
Well, I think I need to take a deep breath for a second here, but I'm going to toss it off to you, Ryan Reed, because I think we've got a couple drivers we would like to talk to, and it looks like we've got 5th place Thomas Laster in the 717. Ryan Marine is standing by.
Well, Thomas, congratulations. Tops of the Champion Motorsports drivers, and a top 5 here in the final race of the season. I confess, We didn't see you on screen a ton because we had some wild stuff going up at the front. So can you tell us a bit about how your race transpired?
Benefited from the first turn incident, and then passed a couple people who seemed to be struggling in front of me, and then pretty much a boring race after that. I didn't really have super good race pace, and the Audi Mason, I think, I kind of just let him by because he was like half a second faster than me every lap. So yeah, then just kind of drove it home after that.
How would you sum up your GT Rivals experience representing Champion Motorsports against some of the best GT drivers from the real world anywhere around?
Honestly, most of it was spent sort of helping and coaching some Bentley drivers, Cosmo and Byrne, and that was really rewarding seeing them get better throughout the season. My races, you know, they were okay. I think I probably could have done better, but helping them get faster was fun.
Well, it was great to have you in the championship. Thanks as well for the help that you provided, and the rest of the CMS guys as well, to our pro racers who are stepping off into this brave new world.
I'm going to be...
thanks for having me.
Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate it there. A little bit of a microphone issue for someone joining us here in the booth. In the meantime, we're going to work out and have a little bit of a conversation with Tom O'Gorman. Podium result for the number 37. Not the Acura this week, Tom, but oh my goodness, I saw how much you were celebrating there at the end. You got to be absolutely thrilled with the podium result. Started on pole. I'm sure you would have liked to have won this race, but this has got to feel like a victory to you.
I'm so glad you got that. But yeah, I'm just thrilled to be here. Those two... Brian and David, I cannot believe how consistent they were. I mean, I think we were basically running the same fastest laps, but they ran it every single lap, and I just didn't have that consistency. So I'm actually surprised to be only 6 seconds down from them. But yeah, I love my Acura. I pick it in the real world, but I decided to try something different this week, swing for the fences. A big thanks also to the sim racing guys. To recommend a couple cars, and I kind of tested them all out, landed on what I drove, and really happy to bring home a podium, especially using my new Asus equipment. It's been a huge step up in my performance in the last couple of weeks, so I wanted to be able to kind of perform on that level.
I think this sim racing kind of boom, as we'll have it during the pandemic, has been pretty far-reaching. But I think you've been one of the drivers that has embraced it the most across many different titles, and this one included. But you know, obviously, we're really excited to we're looking forward to racing returning in the real world here. But tell me about this experience as a whole here in the GT Rivals Championship. Obviously, you had some bad luck, but the pace has been there, and I think everybody has seen that. What are your thoughts coming away from this? As you look at yourself as a racing driver, a competitor, the differences between the real world and the sim, we talk about it all the time, but I want your final thoughts here on this esports environment. How much like the real world is it when you're battling with these competitors that you see on the racetrack in the real world?
Well, I was very lucky that it was already part of my wheelhouse. I actually got my start in sim racing very similar to Brian, although I didn't, win a major competition to get there. When I was 13, 12 years old, I started sim racing, and then that grew into real motorsports with grassroots level things, and then grew into professional racing with SRO. So it was kind of a full circle thing for me, and it's also it's really cool to race against people that I now know and sometimes aspire to race to, or sometimes have raced with them on the sim. And I'm pretty grateful to be able to, flex that racing muscle, as you call it. The racecraft and all of that applies 100% to the real world, the way that it works in the video games. So to flex that on a daily basis is almost better than what we get to do in real life. And I'm certainly looking forward to getting back into a real car for other aspects of that. But it's been a joy.
Tom, thank you so much for talking to us. Congratulations on your podium, and we look forward to seeing you again. I'll see you next week, but congrats and enjoy.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll see if we got Nelson Mason standing by with Ryan Marine. We'll see how this goes.
Well, Nelson, I think we're working through some mic issues on your end. Hopefully it's all settled out, but thank you for putting on a show for us, man. I know you didn't want to start at the back, but it was a blast watching you make progress all the way up into the top 5.
Yeah, it was quite a race for sure. I thought maybe we had the pace to get onto the podium there, but about 5 laps out, I had to massively turn down the engine to try to make it to the end, and I only just squeaked across the line before I ran out of gas. So it was I was pushing as hard as I could, but and trying to get through the field clean. And there's at the start there was kind of cars everywhere, and I went into turn 1 thinking, oh, I'm going to take the first lap off and try to just make it home. And then the seas kind of parted a little bit, and I thought, well, if I can pass 8 cars here, then I might as well do it. So it was quite a race though, and I was pretty happy with my pace. It was unfortunate to start at the back, but at the same point, it was an absolute blast for sure.
Well, it was awesome having you in the championship. Thanks again for entertaining us today, and hope to see you in an SRO paddock down the road.
I think the wind noise is from him going so fast there, Ryan. So I'm going to give credit where credit's due. That was Finney DeCuna that made that joke behind the scenes. I just had to steal it. So we're going to move on now to second place, Brian Heidkotter in the number 5. Well, many races won this season. Today, not one of them, Brian, but you had me on edge, everybody at home on edge. What a drive, what a finish. The official margin, I think, was 0.289 seconds. I'm sure your heart rate was high there. Walk me through not only the end of this race, but the season as a whole, and your thoughts walking away from GT Rivals after being so dominant and ending it on such a high note with an epic battle at the end with Perro.
Yeah, that was really exciting, wasn't it? First of all, congrats to David. He drove an impeccable race. He deserves the win. He pounced when I had some trouble with my rear tire pressures in the early phase of the race, and he took advantage of that. And every time I got close to him after that, my progress kind of stalled out. The loss of downforce following another car was pretty significant here. So I just couldn't quite, I would catch up to Dave, and I couldn't quite get close enough to make anything happen into a passing zone, and he didn't make any mistakes to make it easier on me. So he ran a great race, and I'm pretty happy with second. I was a little surprised to be as on the pace as it looked like I was. I don't know, maybe David can speak to this, but this track didn't feel like it suited a front engine car super well. But nonetheless, I had pretty good pace, and just couldn't quite make any moves happen. So yeah, it's been a great season. It's been a really good series to run with. A lot of very fast, consistent drivers, a lot of clean racing, which is just how I like it. Wreckfests and sim racing aren't really my thing unless that's what you're kind of setting out to do, but I like how this series has tried to emulate the real world as closely as possible. So I'm just appreciative to have been here through the season and finish it off on a pretty high note. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Brian, thank you so much for talking to us. It was an epic season for you and a really good, clean battle to the end there. Congratulations on your wins this season, as well as a hard-fought second place, and we look forward to seeing you back here, whatever is next on the schedule here in the coming months.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Brian. We're going to move on now to David Perro, who won this race by 0.3 of a second, less than 0.3 of a second, and Ryan Marine is standing by with the hometown hero this afternoon.
That's right, South African who now lives in the UK. David, congratulations on a race win in our championship race for GT Rivals, but you had to earn it the last handful of laps as Brian was closing that gap down. What was that like from the race seat of your virtual Ferrari?
It was pretty intense, I won't lie. There was a phase in the middle of the race where I pulled about almost a 2-second gap, and I felt pretty comfortable there, but then I just missed. I got behind the back marker, and it was confusing. We got caught up in the S's, and then Brian smelt blood, and he would not. I couldn't drop him after that. So I kept doing the sort of times I was comfortable with while pushing, but at that point there, I think he got a second wind and really started to attack. And then I managed to pull another gap, and then on the last lap, again, the S's was where the Ferrari was strongest, no question, because even in his slipstream where I struggled in the earlier laps, when we got to the S's, I got close enough that I could make that move down the inside at the top of the hill. So every time he got close in Sector 1, I thought to myself, don't worry, remain calm, because in Sector 2, through the S's, up the hill, you'll be fine. But I knew that, having watched in the rearview mirror, he was very quick in Sector 3. In the final sort of right, double right, and then the left. So I just kept thinking, okay, well, if he's half a second behind, by the time we get to sector 3, I'm safe. And then that back marker got in the way on the last lap, and really made my life tough. So I'm really happy. Thank you guys for inviting me to the series. I must be honest, when I first saw it online, I think it was on Sportscar 365, I saw it, I was like, oh no, why didn't I get an invite? I was going to email SRO, and eventually you guys came along out of your own steam, which is much appreciated, because I had a lot of fun in the series. Obviously some frustrating moments as well, but 3 podiums, which included a win, I'm very happy with. And also big thanks to Kessel, obviously. I raced with them in real life, and it's a pleasure to run their livery on the car during these events. Big thanks to Chris, my engineer, also from real life. Our relationship over the radio is just getting better and better and better, so I'm very grateful to him. We did an awesome setup. And also to Thrustmaster. They're the guys who provide me with my wheels and pedals, so big thanks to them as well for the kits.
One last question for you. When you were dicing with Brian, did you think at all about the battles that you had at Suzuka in particular, and did that affect the way that you approached that fight here today at Kyalami?
At the end, yes, because I was thinking, oh, he's going to catch me and show me how it's done. But as long as I had a gap in the S's, I was okay. I was stressed. I mean, I had sweaty palms. Sim racing is much more intense sometimes than real racing, because in real racing we have other forces, if you will, other things which are attacking our senses and can kind of distract us from our nerves. Whereas here, you just got your heart rate pumping through your chest, and you've become very aware of that. So, yeah, it was tense, and I didn't want a repeat of Suzuka either in case I did something silly. So I was happy in the end.
It was a brilliant race, a great fight to the finish. Thanks so much for putting on the show and for putting up with us idiots behind the mic as well after each of these races. We've had a blast.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So, Ryan, I think it's about time to begin wrapping this up. It's been an amazing season. 8 rounds. We've traveled the world virtually. Well, we couldn't go anywhere in the real world, but let's just kind of recap the season as a whole. We started out at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca and kind of kicked off the season on a pretty high note with a pretty wild start. We ended up with Heike Cotter winning that race. Then we headed out to Mazzano, and then following that, we were at Paul Ricard. We headed out to Spa-Francorchamps, and then we continued our trek across the world. We went to Suzuka and Barcelona and Mount Panorama and Bathurst, Australia, and then finally out here. Ryan, I think this entire season has taught us one thing, is that, as we always say here on Sim TV, is that the racing is virtual, but the entertainment is real. And I think everyone at home that has joined us here on the Sundays afternoons and has kind of watched this, if your heart rate didn't get up there those last 2 laps, I'm not really sure you're a race fan. At least not one that I don't know if we could get along, right? I mean, that was an unbelievable battle, and it's a different medium. It's not a real car, but it's certainly real racing.
Yeah, the competition is real, and you could tell how seriously these drivers are taking this in our post-race interviews, and hearing David talk about having the sweat on his palms and the heart pumping through his chest. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. Is it the real thing? No, it's not, but it's very good at what it is, and it was a ton of fun. I've enjoyed it. It's been great working with you for the first time, and fitting in behind the scenes, Jules as well. I know everyone on the SRO side of things has been super impressed with what you folks have done. It's been a real pleasure to share the virtual booth with you and call some fun racing, because that's really what we've had. All 8 of our races have had something memorable to come out of them, whether it was the controversy at Suzuka or some of the well-deserved finishes that have come after several weeks of heartbreak, and then a great championship battle right down to the wire there to wrap things up here in Kyalami. I mean, it's been a ton of fun. Don't think you could ask for a whole lot more.
Absolutely not. And we're taking a look here at some of the places that we've been this season. We do have some thank yous to do, and I know, Ryan, you touched on a few of them already, but again, we want to extend a huge thank you to the entire Kunos team, Assetto Corsa Competizione, for allowing us the usage of this platform to put on this amazing esports invitational event, Republic of Gamers and Asus and Tough Gaming for all the incredible giveaways, and we'll remind you about the one that we've got going on this afternoon to make sure that you have an opportunity to win some stuff from Asus. or Republic of Gamers. And then, of course, Fanatec and SimLab for the same sort of deal there. Champion Motorsports, the group that has put on these events from a management standpoint on the racetrack. They've done an amazing job setting up the servers, dealing with all the technical aspects of everything. They do a lot of league racing. I'm sure this is one of the higher profile things they've done. They've done an excellent job with it. Of course, AWS and Julian behind the scenes, who's kind of routed everything across America and the world. CrowdStrike, Pirelli, Rebellion Timepieces, Total. Of course, Optimum Battery, Skip Barber Racing Schools offered up some stuff in the giveaways, and they've been a big sponsor as well. 511 Tactical, and of course, SRO America, and Robbie Montanola behind the scenes, who has been doing a lot of the coordinating and getting all these drivers here. It's been a team effort by everybody involved, Ryan, and I'm so grateful to have been a part of this team. Great to work with you. But this isn't the end. This is the end of this season. There might be more coming in the future, so make sure that if you're not subscribed to GT World, if you're not following the GT World Challenge America Twitch or on their Facebook page, you should be, Ryan, because not only is there sim racing stuff in the future, there is also real world racing beginning not too far from now.
Yeah, you said it, and I'm looking forward to it in a big way. I know our American Championships are set to fire back up in relatively early July, the week after 4th of July weekend, so whatever those dates are. That's what I got circled on the calendar. Will be at VIR, which is an awesome racetrack, always puts on a good show, and can't wait to get back in the SRO America paddock with all of our friends and get back to doing what we love to do. This has been a blast, and I think it's going to have a lasting legacy. I think we're going to see more of these guys, real-world drivers, doing the sim racing stuff because they've been exposed to it now and had a blast, and I think it's going to be very useful for them, too, moving forward, and help them when they get back to their day job, which we're set to do in July.
Absolutely, and I think with that, we're going to sign off now. And again, thank you to everybody involved, and of course, can't be remiss without thanking Finney and DeCuna, who's been behind the scenes, another member of the SimTV team who wasn't able to join us here in the booth, but has been behind the scenes as our backup guy in case things had gone wrong, and thankfully didn't have to use him for that, but he's been feeding us a lot of the information about all the events during these races. He's been instrumental to helping us out here. So again, thank you again from us here at SimTV, and make sure that you check out all the social media for all the groups involved, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank everybody for watching, commenting, and participating in this amazing entertainment. We'll be back in the future. Stay with us for more. Have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful summer.